Welcome, everybody. I see you're all logging in. So good to have you today. We'll be starting in just a second. Give everyone a chance to get comfortable and get ready for our great conversation. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Global Connections, a production of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston every Friday at noon. My name is Marianne Maldonado, and today our guest is Stephanie Tsuru. As a literacy advocate, she has worked with underserved populations with low literacy rates and helped foster reading programs and clubs all over the world. From her work as a member of the World Affairs Council's Board of Directors, to making reading available to children in Africa, to serving as president of the Ladies for Literacy of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, and now founding a new co-working space where women can gather to find community and to propel their dreams. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited that you could join us, and I know many students and educators and our World Affairs membership is excited to learn more about you and the great work that you're doing. You've just opened this amazing place called SheSpace here in Houston. And I know that was part of a maybe a legacy or a mission because you've had a strong lineage of strong female role models. So tell me about maybe a little bit about your background and what do you think was the biggest influencer in sparking your passion for reading and the importance of literacy?
Hello everyone again, and thank you for having me. I'm very fortunate to have come from a long line of very strong females, and most of them were actually educators going back many generations of education. Passion in our family, not only educators, but just like myself, an education advocate. So I grew up in a very rural area in Missouri, and I always said we didn't have a lot, but we did have books. And my parents and my father was also an educator, and my mother was an English teacher, and my father taught history. So we didn't have a lot, but we had a lot of books, and we made a lot of trips to the library. And we also had access to a bookmobile that would come to our community. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later and how that affected me. But my parents read all the time. I thought everyone read all the time. I had no idea until I got older that that isn't necessarily the norm. And so that really affected my life and my life's journey. And now one of my daughters is actually an early childhood educator focusing in pre-literacy skills. So it has even continued on past me. And we can talk more about the global reach of that for me. We'll get to that a little bit.
So I know reading was important when I was growing up. I see my daughter and grandgirls fostering the love of reading, though it's definitely digital now. Can you expand on the importance of literacy in education, especially globally?
So literacy really is the foundation of all education, and education is the foundation for life success. So life success is directly linked back to literacy. And in our city, particularly, which is I'm most familiar with, and then certain parts of Africa, it starts with pre-literacy as young as 3-year-olds. And that's just getting them familiar with books. My daughter is in a section of the city where she has 4- and 5-year-olds, and they come to school having never seen a book. Like, they don't know how to hold the book. They don't know how to turn the pages of a book. So that is what I see here locally. So if you don't know how to read and read at a grade appropriate level by 2nd grade, the chances of dropout skyrocket by the time you're in 9th grade. So if you're not caught up to an age appropriate reading level by the end of 2nd grade, so it starts very, very early, If you're not reading at age level by kindergarten, even your chances of catching up are very difficult. By second grade, almost impossible, and that's directly correlated to dropout in ninth grade. So on a global level, it's even more difficult. And again, I'm most familiar with Africa and different parts of Africa, but it's even so important there. They also include literacy as number literacy. So it's not necessarily just word literacy, but it's number literacy. But all of it is directly linked to educational success, directly.
Mhm. And your passion for literacy, it truly is contagious. Can you speak to the power of reading? I know in our previous conversations, you've talked about that emotional high you get when you read to children. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the power of reading.
So I started volunteering about 10 years ago in a few schools with the young children. And when we first moved to Houston, and I was kind of finding my way around the city, not really knowing. I came from a tiny town in Missouri, and then I moved to a rural area in Colorado. And then I came from a rural area to Houston. So I was a little overwhelmed with just the magnitude and the size of the city. So I started volunteering around different parts of the city just to familiarize myself. And I was mostly in like Fort Bend and in the third ward. And what all these schools said, we need someone to read to the children. We need someone to sit with the children, read to the children. And I had children as young as 3-year-olds reading to them, like in the pre-K programs. But my favorite story is a little second grade boy, and he was on the playground. He was like a rough and tough kid, but he loved crawling up in my lap and being read to. Still one of my favorite memories, and the power of that is transformational. They did not have books in their home. He had never been read to. It is absolutely an amazing experience to see a child jump up and down because they're excited because you're coming to read to them. I mean, that's kind of an amazing, amazing thing. And we can talk about it more, but I take several trips a year to Africa. And I always joke because packing the clothes is the easy part, packing the books is the hard part, because they want the books and they don't have the technology. And I bring books to leave with the kids. And these kids are all the way up to 18, 20 years old, and they are fascinated. They will just sit quietly and enjoy and love being read to. It's a very, very powerful thing. And I think that comes back to when I was small. And now I read to my grandgirls. I have grandgirls too.
One of my most vivid memories was being read to in sixth grade. My teacher would pick a book, and we would spend 2 or 3 weeks, and every afternoon she read to us. Can you tell us a little bit? I've heard a little bit about this book desert, and I don't really understand that, having grown up with books and being read to. Tell us a little bit about how that exists in the US and also globally, maybe in Africa.
Yes, so I can specifically speak to a couple parts of the United States and then a couple countries in Africa. So when I was doing my getting my master's at Rice, I went back when I was age 53, so I'm kind of a late bloomer, but better late than never. But I stumbled on this fact. So my thesis was on the face of adult illiteracy in Houston specifically. And then working backwards, if you don't learn to read when you're 3, 4, 5, 6, what your life looks like as an adult, as an illiterate. So I stumbled on this term of book desert, and I had no idea what it was. But as I did more research, a book desert is just what it sounds like. It's an area that is void of books. So in Houston, and the study was done in the Houston Housing Authority areas, there is one book for every 300 children. And I look around my home, and I'm sure all of you out there look around your homes and just try to imagine what your home would look like, or your office or your classroom without books. I mean, I truly can't imagine it. So that's a book desert. Now you go to DC, and that number escalates to one book for every 800 children.
Wow.
And then in Zambia and Ghana, I would guess that number is probably one in the tens of thousands of children. Like
Staggering.
no books anywhere.
So there is a large, sadly growing homeless community here in Houston, and you started a book club for them.
Mhm.
Can you speak to what we think we know about Houston, being almost now the third largest city in the US? Speak about the myths of the population as we know it and the strength you've seen. And maybe you could also kind of touch on the middle school girls'
Mm.
experience that you've had.
Well, like I said, literacy, well, actually, it would be reading is my passion. Words are my passion. I've always loved the power of words, and I was looking for a way to connect to the middle school girls. We'll start with them. And I started out just having like a gathering of the girls, kind of like a mentoring, just get together with the girls, but I wasn't really connecting. And so I started the book club, and the skill came in picking the right book. So finding a book that they would be interested in and that also had messages so that we would have a lot to talk about. And we were talking earlier before this, before we were getting ready to start, and the middle school girls are interesting creatures, but they are so brutally honest and entertaining and forthright. It was always the highlight of my week. And a lot came out of those discussions. We would get into some personal things with the girls, things that were going on in their lives, and just books are so incredibly powerful. Then when I was at Rice, we were charged with doing a community project, and I decided to do a book club in the homeless segment for two reasons. One of my siblings was homeless for a while, and we were really impacted as a family by that. And again, it was a mental health issue, and I know a lot about it, and I know the fallacies that accompanied the homeless population. And she's very, very bright, very highly educated. She did have mental health issues. And the fallacy is that, they're uneducated, they're illiterate. And I set about correcting that fallacy. At the same time, almost simultaneously, one day I was driving, making the loop under on 610, and I saw a homeless woman set up there reading a book.
Hmm.
And it's something I will never forget, and it just all of a sudden dawned on me, I'm going to gather these people together, and we are gonna have a book club. So I started several of these book clubs in the homeless population, and I provided coffee and donut holes and provided the books. And there's actually these homeless book clubs all over the country. This one that's been going the longest is out of Boston, and I did a lot of research, and these wonderful people would set their life and their schedule around coming to the book club every week, and we'd have assignments and talk about intriguing conversation. Just fabulous. And again, it's the power of books. And on a global perspective, so in Zambia, specifically the compounds of Lusaka, Zambia, which is their capital, compounds would be like districts inside the city. Many of them, they live under black trash bags. And so most of them do not read. None of them have books, but that doesn't matter the age, they love to be read to. And so again, cultural discussions, unbelievable. Now, Marianne, are we going to talk about the writing in Africa, or should I talk about that now? Because I think it's so interesting.
We're going to talk about it, but talk about it now. Yes,
Oh, we can talk about it later, just when
okay.
we were talking about that. So I also think that writing goes hand in hand. Just because you're a good reader doesn't mean you're a good writer, and vice versa. But I come also from a family of writers. My daughter is a published writer. My mother was a published writer. It appears to have skipped my generation, but I do the best I can. I would not insult a writer by calling myself a writer, but I appreciate good writing. So when I go to Africa a couple times a year, I have writing workshops there. And in the United States, the people that are attracted to writing in the schools are the young women, but in Zambia, it's the young men. So that was just a real eye opener and a very cultural difference all the way up to 18, 20 years old. And the difference there is their world is very black and white, and they think very concretely, and they have a very difficult time with creative writing. Like the imagination for them is something they struggle with. They write what they know, and then we all start with writing what we know, but it's been very interesting, the difference between like Africa and the United States.
But these young men, just curious, you talk about creative writing, they really have no idea of what's beyond their borders. And it must be very fulfilling when you can uncover or loosen them the ability to think what's beyond that river, what's beyond that mountain, what's beyond
And
those waters.
yeah, and it's tough though, because they don't have a frame of reference outside of
Mhm.
probably like a 4 or 5 block area, geographic area that they've lived in their whole lives. And so that you can read stories to them and give them writing points and get them started, but it's still really interesting. It always comes back to what they know.
Mhm.
So that shows you how much we learn from our reading.
Right, exactly. I know you've talked about the writing workshops. Have you, I think you've also done some other literacy projects, both in Zambia, Ghana. Maybe tell us a little bit about those.
So my mission in all of those places is to get the books to the kids. So when I was talking about the book desert, I simultaneously found out that HISD had closed 73 of their elementary school libraries for lack of funding, mostly lack of librarians, no current books. So I put that fact with the fact that there's no books in the homes, and I said, well, we have to take the books to the kids. And so not only do the kids they don't have books at homes, they don't have books at school, they don't have transportation access to get to libraries. And so I partnered with the Barbara Bush Foundation, who then partnered with Harris County Public Library, and we are building out mobile libraries. And you can look it up. They're called the Curiosity Cruisers, and we're building our third one now, third one in 3 years. And we've given out tens of thousands of books. And the whole point is to build the home library. And the latest one does have a STEM focus. Of course, there's books on there because it's a traveling library, but also has a STEM classroom. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to do the same thing in Africa, but major roadblocks, and one of them being the roads. The roads are so horrible, you can't drive anything. It's like there's craters, and you can't loan out books. You have to just give out the books because you'll never get the books back. You know, I don't have any incentive for them to return the books. And
Mhm.
so I can loan out the books. I can't loan out the books. I can give the books in Africa, but then I don't know what happens with them. I don't have a tracking system. I don't have any objective way of measuring what happens once they leave the hand. Most of the community schools in Africa have about 200 kids in a classroom, and they're dark, and there's no reading, and they have a library that's about a shelf long, but they won't let the kids take them because they won't get the books back. So it's a lot of obstacles. We're still working on it. Um, we'll get there. But there are organizations that have given out like 33 million books, like since the 50s. So they're not in these particular countries is all. So they are doing work all over the world. And I think we really need to focus on these NGOs that are particularly just literacy NGOs.
We have a question from Jonas, who's said he has previously worked at an area literacy council, and he noticed a significant makeup of classrooms are refugees or people recently immigrating. His question is, can you speak on the importance or impact literacy or ESL for immigrants in the US?
Another passion of mine is the GED programs. And that actually started also from working in the homeless population, and just life got in their way, and most of them were unable to graduate from high school. So there is also the Mayor's Literacy Project is a GED project, but also is ESL. So they may have a diploma or a GED equivalent from wherever they're coming from, or they may not, but the English is the stumbling block. So the focus on all those programs is literacy. again, it kind of ties back to what my thesis was on, was like what life looks like if you're illiterate. Most of them are not illiterate, but it's the language barrier. There are incredible programs in the city for the vast group of immigrants we have coming in, and those struggling with English. And they're most of the teachers are retired school teachers that do this just as a labor of love, but it's the whole focus is reading.
Mm. So I know all of this passion for reading, passion for words, passion for sharing the power of reading. You've now taken on a different kind of role, but you're also spurring passion. You are the founder of SheSpace. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it ties into advocacy for literacy?
Well, it actually came out of my middle school book clubs with the girls. And what I noticed was the power of mentoring on that level, and the power that was gained from reading the books together. I became very involved with that, just in mentoring young women, young professional women that were just kind of learning how to balance life. And I really wanted to leverage mentoring. You can only really mentor one or two women well at a time. If you take on too many more, you're not doing a good job. You don't have the time. It's not beneficial to them. So I really wanted to leverage the mentoring, and that directly came from the book clubs, the homeless society, and the middle school girls. And so this is a direct, yeah, this is directly related to those experiences. Most of the women that will be in SheSpace, which is like a educational programming event, co-working space, most of them are highly literate. But as a way to carry on my interest and to make sure that women are still reading, we are building a bookstore inside SheSpace. The only caveat, the book has to be written by a woman, because we're a female focused space. And the problem has been selecting them, because there's so many good ones. I only have so much space, and I want to give all these women visibility and get their books out there. So we will be cycling through a number of books and authors, and Houston authors. And we do a lot of mentoring. Actually, I wouldn't call it mentoring. We have connected with some girl nonprofits. One is a health and wellness nonprofit for girls. One's a leadership nonprofit, and the other one's a STEM nonprofit, but they will be coming into our space, and we will be having book clubs with them.
That's great. We have another question. How can people donate books, or maybe where? Donate books in Houston, and where is the help most needed?
So the help most needed is what we talked about earlier, and that is reading to young children. So if you can get young children exposed and falling in with the power of the word, and it really is reading. So if you have a child that loves to read, then the literacy takes care of itself. So it really is exposing children to reading. There is a wonderful organization that's kind of, I believe, started with HCC, and it's called Connect for Literacy, like the number 4. And it's just, you go on, sign up, and right now you are reading virtually with children. So you have like a 20-minute period. You're matched with a child in a school somewhere in Houston or surrounding areas, and you will develop a relationship with them through the reading. And it's fabulous. You used to be able to go to the classrooms, but now I'm not sure they'll return to that soon, or if they will ever return to that, because they can reach a larger audience doing it virtually. That's the number one most important thing. Read to your child, read to the neighbors, read to your grandchildren, your niece and nephews, or go into the community, because even the teachers don't have time to read one-on-one with the children. They're doing the best thing they can. So the second, or actually it was the first part of the question, is where can you give books? There are many, many women's shelters. There's Salvation Army. There is Mission of Yahweh. There's Star of Hope. There's Search. There's Boys and Girls Club. They all need books. The books they have are tattered and torn, and they don't like books that are tattered and torn. They're just like us, but I'm sure everyone, you read a book, you're never going to read it again. What do you do with it? Take it to these, do a little book drive in your neighborhood. It's so easy. Everyone has like gallons, or not gallons, boxes and boxes of books, and just have one person drop it off there. And they're so, so appreciated. And I know we think that reading is going the way of technology, and it is, but not at these locations. They want the books. So
Right,
it's
they don't have
easy to do.
access. That was just going to lead into my next question. With the move to kind of online reading, everything technology, especially in the COVID era, what does that look like for homeless who maybe don't have access to any sort of electronic news or reading source?
Well, most of them actually have phones. So, yeah, most of them have phones. They don't have much else, but they oftentimes have access to, they will go to the public libraries. They are more tech savvy than you probably would imagine, because most of them have not lived on the streets forever. It's life circumstances. So most of them are very tech savvy. Almost all of them have phones. And even in Africa, they have phones. Like even when they don't have a home, they have a phone, and same here. So they can read on their phones, but they still enjoy having something that belongs to them. So they love having books.
So the World Affairs Council has had book clubs in the past. We have a large community of avid readers. What
I'm
books are you,
sure.
yes, what books are you currently reading?
Well, I am so glad you asked that. And I'm glad we talked about it at the end instead of the beginning, because I could talk about books like all day long. So I try to read multiple genres. I am not what I call a fluff reader. I don't enjoy fiction as much. I enjoy fiction if it's based in fact, or like, so creative nonfiction. I joined a new book club just a couple of weeks ago, and I just happen to have the book right here. So I have a couple books I'm reading, and one of them is called American. Does that show up backwards? Does it show
No.
up backwards? No. Okay. American Dirt. It came out this year, and it is about the story of a mother and her young son caught up in an immigrant train and trying to make their way to the United States.
Wow.
It's very powerful. Then another book that actually is kind of tied to Houston right now is called The Choice by Dr. Edith Eger. And she's actually speaking at the Holocaust Gala here shortly. She's in her 90s, and it is about the choices she made in her life related to the Holocaust. And that's amazing. And then this book I just finished, Americana. Again, it won one of the best books of the year last year. And it's written by a Nigerian woman, and also very powerful. And this is fiction, but all of them are rooted in fear and the tragedies in their life, but the power of hope and grit and tenacity. And they all have that common theme, but it's all about different time eras and different parts of the world, and all so good. But don't start reading them if you need to get a good night's sleep, because it'll keep you up.
Great advice. And for those who are watching, the council is so excited to host Journal H.R. McMaster. He's going to be with us on the 21st. And if you register to come to that particular program, you get his book free, and it's signed, and it's shipped right to your door. It's called
Oh, wow.
Backgrounds. Yeah, so you'll want to make sure you register for our upcoming program. Stephanie, what single most important thing can we do to ensure literacy both locally and globally?
We all just need to keep working on it. As technology has taken over books, this is something we didn't talk about, but bookstores are going out of business, and it's so easy just to click and buy. But I think, like I said, as the mother of an author and close friend of owners of bookstores, I think we need to make sure that we frequent our local independent bookstores, so that the writers keep writing, and then we will have books to read. And then on a personal note, it's just what I said, we need to read to children so that the generations of readers continue, because reading is dying off a little bit. It's not as important. And the other thing that goes through that is actually writing as well. So writing notes like having children write notes. The reading and writing is something we need to keep alive and well, and we can set the example. We can be the role models.
Absolutely. Well, Stephanie, it's been our pleasure to have you join us today. Telling us a little bit about your amazing SheSpace location that's inside the loop, right?
It's at I-10 and Studemont in this area called the Lower Heights District, which I didn't even know about, but I do now.
Oh, great.
So it's great. It's being built right now.
Well, if you're a woman and you're interested in maybe starting a business, getting some mentorship, maybe getting out of your home office and going
Yes.
to another location, check out SheSpace here in Houston. Stephanie, thank you so much for all you
Thank
do.
you. And thanks everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Okay, goodbye everyone. See you at
Bye-bye.
our next Global Connections program. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.